Rain fell softly over the narrow streets of the old town. The evening wind carried the smell of wet dust and smoke from cheap stoves. Inside a tiny broken house at the end of the lane, Mira sat by a flickering candle, counting a few wrinkled notes. Her hands trembled as she whispered to herself, "Only 600 left, and Samir's medicine costs 800. She pressed her eyes shut, trying not to cry. On the bed lay her younger brother, thin and pale, coughing weakly. The doctor had said he needed good food and rest, things Mira couldn't afford. Since their parents' death 2 years ago, she had done everything possible, cleaning houses, washing clothes, and selling vegetables, to keep them alive. But each day seemed harder than the last. The landlord had already warned her. "If you don't pay this week, I'll throw you out, girl." No more excuses. That night, as the clock struck 9, Mira wrapped a torn shawl around her shoulders and stepped out into the rain. She walked toward the bakery to ask for leftover bread. The road was dark, lit only by yellow streetlights, and water ran down her worn slippers. Then she saw something. An old woman lay on the side of the road, half covered in mud. People passed by, glancing for a moment, then hurrying away. Mira's heart clenched. Without thinking, she ran forward. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The old woman didn't respond. Her clothes were rich-looking, but soaked and torn. Mira bent down, trying to lift her. "Please hold on," she whispered, voice shaking. No one stopped to help. Cars rushed by, splashing dirty water on her skirt. Mira didn't care. With all her strength, she dragged the woman to her small home, half a kilometer away. Her arms hurt, her feet were bleeding, but she kept going. Once inside, she laid the woman near the fire and covered her with a blanket. Samir, waking up from his weak sleep, looked surprised. "Mira, who is she?" "I don't know," Mira said softly, "but she's someone's mother, and she needs help." She boiled some rice and fed the woman spoon by spoon. Hours passed before the old lady opened her eyes. They were gentle but sharp, filled with wisdom and sadness. "You saved me," the woman whispered. "Why would you help a stranger?" Mira smiled faintly. "Because one day, someone helped me too." The woman studied her patched clothes, her tired face, her soft eyes. She wanted to ask more, but her voice failed. Soon, she fell asleep again. Later that night, Mira sat beside her, drying the woman's clothes by the fire. She didn't notice that the pendant around the woman's neck, a golden piece shaped like a crest, shone faintly in the candlelight. By morning, when the first rays of sun touched the cracked walls, Mira woke up to an empty room. The old woman was gone. The blanket lay neatly folded on the chair. Only one thing remained, the golden pendant, placed carefully beside a note that read, "Kindness is never forgotten." Mira picked it up, staring at the shining emblem. It looked expensive, far too grand for a poor girl's hands. She didn't know that this small act of mercy would soon turn her world upside down. Outside, the rain had stopped, but for Mira, a storm was just beginning. The morning light felt strange in Mira's tiny room. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. The old woman had vanished without a sound, leaving behind only the golden pendant on the small wooden table. Mira turned it over in her hand. The surface was smooth and heavy. In the center was a small carved symbol, a pair of wings around a crown. She had never seen anything like it before. "This must be important," she whispered. But her heart filled with worry. Why would a rich old woman wander the streets alone in the rain? And why leave something so valuable behind? Mira tucked the pendant safely in a small cloth pouch and hid it under the floorboard near her bed. She had no time for mysteries. Her brother, Samir, was getting weaker. His cough had grown worse during the night. "Mira," he murmured, "don't worry about me. Save your money. I'll be fine." She smiled to comfort him, but her eyes were full of fear. "Don't talk like that. I'll find a way. I promise." That promise weighed heavily on her heart as the day dragged on. At work, her employer, Mrs. D'Souza, complained non-stop. "You clean too slow, girl. If you can't do it properly, I'll find someone else." Mira bowed her head. "Yes, ma'am." I'm sorry her body ached, but her mind was on Samir, and that strange pendant. When she got home that night, she found her landlord waiting outside her door, arms crossed. "You have till tomorrow," he said coldly. "Pay the rent or leave." Tears burned in her eyes after he left. She looked at the hidden pendant again. It sparkled faintly in the candlelight, enough to make her heart race. Maybe she could pawn it, just for some medicine and rent. She'd return it later if she ever found the woman again. "Forgive me," she whispered, pressing the pendant to her chest. "I don't want to sell it. But I have no choice." Meanwhile, across the city, in a world of marble walls and glass towers, Adrian Cole sat behind his giant desk at Cole Enterprises, one of the most powerful companies in the country. His sharp grey eyes stared at a photograph of an elderly woman with kind eyes. His mother. "She's been missing for 2 days," said his assistant nervously. "The police found her car near the old market, but no trace of her." Adrian clenched his jaw. "Keep searching. She's not just anyone. She's my mother." He turned the photo over, and there it was, printed on the back. The same family crest that was now in Mira's possession. That evening, Mira walked to a small jewelry shop on the corner. The signboard flickered. "Patel's Gold and Silver." She hesitated before entering. The shop smelled of polish and metal. "Can I help you?" asked the jeweler, peering over his glasses. Mira took out the pendant carefully. I want to sell this, sir. Just for a little money." The jeweler's eyes widened the moment he saw it. "Where did you get this?" I found it," Mira stammered. "A lady left it behind." Before she could finish, the jeweler stepped back and whispered something to a young man in the corner. The young man quickly dialed a number on his phone. Mira felt uneasy. "Is something wrong?" The jeweler forced a smile. No. Please wait here a moment. This piece is very special." Outside, a black car stopped in front of the shop. 2 men in suits got out. Mira's heart began to pound. Within minutes, one of the men showed her a badge. "Miss, you need to come with us. You're suspected of theft. This pendant belongs to the Cole family. Mira's world spun." "No!" "You don't understand. I didn't steal anything." But her words fell on deaf ears. They took the pendant from her trembling hands and led her toward the car. As the city lights blurred past the window, Mira sat frozen, fear tightening her chest. She had no idea she was being taken to meet Adrian Cole himself, the billionaire whose life, fate, and anger were about to collide with hers. The car ride felt endless. Mira's heart thumped like a drum in her chest as the black vehicle moved through the rich side of the city. Tall buildings, shining lights, wide, clean roads. It all looked like another world, far away from her broken home. She clutched her shawl tightly. "Please, sir," she whispered to the man beside her. "I didn't steal anything. I found that pendant with an old woman who needed help." The man didn't answer. His cold eyes stayed fixed ahead. Finally, The car stopped in front of a huge glass building with golden letters that read, Cole Enterprises. Mira had heard that name before, the richest company in the country. Her breath caught in her throat as she was led through the marble lobby, past men in suits who looked at her like she didn't belong there. Inside a grand office on the top floor, a man stood by the window, tall and sharp in a dark suit. His back was turned to her, but even from behind he looked powerful, like someone used to control and respect. When he turned, she saw his face for the first time. Adrian Cole. His cold grey eyes met hers, and she felt small, like a child standing before a storm. "So," he said, voice low but full of authority, "you're the woman who had my mother's pendant." Mira's voice trembled. "Sir, please, it's not what you think. I found it after helping an old woman who—" He cut her off. "Helping?" His tone turned sharp. "You expect me to believe that a poor street cleaner just happened to find my mother's most valuable piece of jewelry?" "I'm not lying!" Mira cried. "She was hurt, lying on the road. I took her home, cared for her, and she left the pendant behind. I was only trying to sell it to buy medicine for my brother." Adrian's eyes hardened. "A convenient story. Every thief has one," tears filled Mira's eyes. "I swear on my life I didn't steal it." Adrian walked closer, his expression unreadable. He held the pendant in his gloved hand. "This was custom made. Only one exists. You expect me to believe my mother just gave it to you?" Mira looked down. "She didn't give it. She left it. Maybe by mistake." For a moment, silence filled the room. The ticking of the clock sounded loud. Adrian's assistant, a kind-faced woman named Clara, stood by the door, watching quietly. Something in Mira's shaking voice made her uneasy. "Mr. Cole," Clara said softly, "perhaps we should check with the hospitals first." "If your mother was injured—" Adrian raised a hand. "Enough, Clara. I'll handle this." He turned back to Mira. "Until we know the truth, you're not going anywhere." Mira gasped. "You can't do this! I didn't do anything wrong!" Adrian's eyes flashed. "You were caught trying to sell my mother's jewelry. You'll stay in the guest house on my property until the police confirm your story." She took a step back, shaking her head. "Why are you punishing me?" "I only tried to help." "Because," Adrian said coldly, "good people don't lie." Those words broke something inside her. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she refused to beg. "Maybe in your world, truth is something you can buy. But in mine, it's all I have." Adrian froze for a second. Something in her voice, her honesty, made his chest tighten, but pride silenced him. "Take her away," he said quietly. 2 guards escorted Mira out. As she walked down the long hallway, her heart felt heavy, not with fear, but with injustice. From the window, Adrian watched her go, the pendant still in his hand. For a brief moment, his reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, a man who had everything, yet somehow nothing at all. The Cole estate looked like something out of a dream. Long marble hallways, shining chandeliers, and silent servants who moved like shadows. To Mira, it felt more like a golden prison. 2 guards led her through the grand gates to a small guest house at the back of the property. It was bigger than her entire neighborhood. Yet, as the heavy doors closed behind her, she felt only fear. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded tightly. "What if they never believe me?" she thought. Her mind returned to Samir. Was he eating? Was he safe? The thought made her chest ache. A soft knock came on the door. It was Clara, Adrian's assistant, the same woman who had spoken gently in the office earlier. She carried a tray of food and some clean clothes. "Here," Clara said kindly. "Mr. Cole said you can stay until things are cleared up. You'll be given meals and a room. Please. Try to rest." Mira nodded silently. "Thank you, ma'am." Clara smiled faintly. "And please, call me Clara." After Clara left, Mira sat by the window, staring at the city lights beyond the garden. She didn't know that from the main house, Adrian stood by his study window, watching the same view, and thinking of her. The next morning, Mira woke early. She folded her blanket neatly and stepped outside. The garden shimmered with dew, and gardeners moved quietly among the roses. She approached one of them, an old man with kind eyes. "Good morning," she said shyly. "Do you need help?" He looked surprised. "Help?" "You're a guest here." She smiled softly. "Not really. I'd rather do something than sit alone," so she worked beside him, trimming branches and carrying water. The servants whispered among themselves, curious about the girl accused of theft, who still smiled and helped like a friend. By afternoon, the air around her began to change. Maids who once ignored her now greeted her warmly. The kitchen staff sent her fresh bread and tea. Her gentle words and humble nature melted the frost that hung over the mansion. In his office, Adrian flipped through files but couldn't focus. His mother's face kept appearing in his mind, and Mira's trembling voice when she said, "In my world, truth is all I have." He finally asked, "Clara, any news from the police?" "Not yet, sir," she replied. "But perhaps you should speak to her again." "She doesn't seem like a liar." Adrian didn't answer. He didn't want to admit that a part of him already agreed. That evening, he walked to the guest house. Mira was sitting outside under the tree, mending her torn shawl by the dim porch light. She looked up, startled when she saw him. "Mr. Cole?" she whispered, standing quickly. He looked uncomfortable. "You shouldn't be working in the garden. You're not a servant." "I don't mind," she said softly. "It helps me forget my worries." Adrian hesitated. "You still insist you didn't steal the pendant?" "Yes," she said, meeting his eyes. "If I were a thief, I wouldn't have taken an old woman home in the rain." Something in her voice, steady, without anger, made him quiet. For the first time he noticed her eyes. They were tired, but full of peace. He cleared his throat. "Dinner will be sent to your room. If you need anything, tell Clara." As he turned to leave, Mira spoke gently. "Mr. Cole, I pray your mother is safe. She was kind, whoever she was." He paused, startled. Few people spoke to him with kindness, and no one prayed for him. That night, while the mansion slept, Adrian stood alone in his study, staring at his mother's photograph. The pendant lay on the desk beside him, catching the moonlight. For the first time in years, guilt touched his heart. The next morning, the silence broke. A phone rang loudly on Adrian's desk. Clara answered, her voice shaking. "Sir, they found her, an elderly woman matching your mother's description. She's alive, but in the hospital." Adrian froze. "Where?" As he rushed toward the door, he stopped for a brief second, his thoughts flashing to the girl in the guest house. Mira had prayed for his mother. And now, fate was answering. The hospital smelled of medicine and silence. Machines beeped softly in the background, and the cold air carried a sense of worry. Adrian walked quickly through the hallways, his long coat brushing against the floor. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly, a sight no one in his company had ever seen before. When he reached room 307, He froze at the door. Inside, lying weakly on the bed, was his mother, Mrs. Evelyn Cole. Her face was pale, but her chest rose and fell gently. For the first time in days, he breathed again. "Mother," he whispered, stepping closer. She opened her eyes slowly, her lips curling into a faint smile. "Adrian, you found me." He took her hand, his voice thick. "Where were you? I searched everywhere. You could have—" But she stopped him with a touch. "Calm down, son. I was lost, not gone. A kind soul helped me." A young woman, Adrian frowned. "A woman?" "Yes." Her eyes softened, remembering. "I was weak and fainted in the rain. People walked past me, but she stopped. She took me to her home. She fed me, cared for me, even though she had nothing." Her words struck him like lightning. His mind raced. Did she say her name?" Mrs. Cole smiled faintly. "Yes." Mira Adrian stepped back, stunned. The name echoed in his head like a bell. Mira! The girl he accused, the one he humiliated. His throat tightened. "Mother, she's at our estate." Evelyn's eyes widened. "At the estate? Why?" Adrian looked away, shame filling his voice. "Because I thought she stole your pendant. I had her brought in. I didn't believe her. For a long moment, his mother just stared at him. Then, in a tired whisper, she said, 'Oh, Adrian, with all your power, you still don't know how to see the truth.' He lowered his head, guilt flooding his heart. Mrs. Cole reached for his hand again. "Bring her here, Adrian. I want to see the girl who showed me real kindness, something money can't buy." Back at the mansion, Mira sat quietly in the guest house, staring out the window. The morning sun warmed her face, but her thoughts were far away. She wondered if the old woman she had helped was safe, the one who had vanished so mysteriously. Then the door opened. Clara stepped in, smiling breathlessly. "Mira, Mr. Cole wants to see you. His mother has been found." Mira stood quickly, her heart racing. "She's alive." "Yes, she's at the hospital. Come." "He's waiting." 2 days after the hospital visit, the Cole mansion felt strangely different. For the first time, the air carried warmth instead of silence. Mrs. Evelyn Cole had returned home, still weak but smiling again. Servants rushed to greet her, and flowers filled the living room, but her first request wasn't luxury or rest. It was Mira. "Find that girl," she told her son firmly. "I want her here." Not as a guest, as my companion Adrian hesitated. "Mother, she has her own life." "She might not want to stay." Evelyn smiled knowingly. "Then ask her. But remember, son, not everything can be repaid with money." That afternoon, a black car stopped at Mira's small house. She was washing clothes outside when the driver approached her with a letter. Her heart skipped a beat as she saw the name signed at the bottom. Adrian Cole. "Mira, my mother wishes to see you again. Please come to the Cole estate. You will always be welcome here." Adrian Mira looked at her brother, Samir, who lay resting inside. He was smiling weakly, his breathing easier thanks to the medicine she'd been able to buy with the money Adrian had quietly sent after the hospital visit. She didn't know it had come from him. She thought it was a donation from the hospital fund. She pressed the letter to her chest. "Maybe it's time to thank them properly," she said softly. When Mira arrived at the mansion, Evelyn greeted her like family. "There you are, my dear," she said, reaching out with trembling arms. "You saved my life." "Now let me have you near me." Mira blushed. "Madam, you owe me nothing." "I only did what was right." Evelyn laughed gently. then stay and keep doing right by keeping me company. This house has too many walls and not enough hearts. Mira smiled, unable to refuse. She moved into the mansion as Evelyn's caretaker, reading to her, walking with her in the garden, making her laugh with simple stories of her neighborhood. Everyone noticed the change. The once cold and silent mansion now echoed with laughter and gentle conversation. And Adrian noticed too, though he pretended not to. Every morning, Adrian found himself pausing by the terrace just to hear Mira's soft voice from the garden below. She spoke with his mother about everything: flowers, life, hope. Sometimes he caught himself smiling without realizing it, but every time she looked up and met his eyes, he turned away quickly, pretending to check his phone or give orders to the staff. One evening, Evelyn called him to her room. "Adrian," she said, "have you thanked that girl properly?" He frowned. "I told her she could stay here, Mother. I even offered her a salary." Evelyn shook her head. "You still think kindness can be bought?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Then what should I do?" His mother smiled softly. "Listen to her. Learn from her." Later that night, Mira stood on the balcony outside her small room, looking up at the stars. The garden below glowed with moonlight. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. It was Adrian. He looked different that night. Quieter, almost gentle. "You're still awake?" he asked. "I couldn't sleep," Mira said. "The stars look peaceful tonight." Adrian followed her gaze. "I haven't looked at them in years," he admitted. "Too busy, chasing things that never mattered." Mira turned toward him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. "Sometimes peace doesn't come from what we have, but what we give." Their eyes met, for the first time without anger or pride. For a brief moment the world felt still. Then a servant appeared, breaking the silence. "Sir, it's about Miss Mira's brother." "He's fallen ill again," Mira gasped. "Samir!" "What happened?" Adrian placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry. I'll take care of it." The next day, Samir was moved to the best hospital in the city, all expenses paid. Mira begged to know who was responsible, but the hospital staff simply said, "An anonymous donor." What she didn't know was that Adrian had spent the entire night arranging everything. When she thanked him later for helping her find the best doctors, he only said, "You helped my mother." "Let me help your family." Mira smiled through her tears. "You don't have to, Mr. Cole." "I know," he said softly, "but I want to." That night, as Evelyn watched from her window, she whispered to herself with a knowing smile, "Ah, love always begins in kindness and ends in fate." Time passed softly in the Cole mansion. Days turned into weeks, and each sunrise brought quiet warmth that the house had never known before. Mira now spent most of her mornings walking with Mrs. Cole through the gardens. She read to her, helped her paint, and listened to her stories of the past. But often she would feel someone watching her from the balcony above. When she looked up, she would see Adrian, pretending to check his phone or talk to a servant, though his eyes always followed her, thoughtful, unsure, but filled with something new. Their paths crossed often, sometimes in the hallways, sometimes in the library, sometimes over tea with Mrs. Cole. And each time, the silence between them grew shorter. One afternoon, Mira was helping Evelyn with her painting when Adrian entered the room. His usual confidence was missing. He looked almost nervous. "Mother," he said, clearing his throat. "I have a meeting soon. Do you need anything before I leave?" Evelyn smiled slyly. Yes, actually. Mira and I were just saying we need a new collar for the roses. Perhaps you can take Mira to the market to buy it. Mira looked startled. Oh, that's not necessary, madam. But Evelyn waved her hand. Go, my dear. I insist. Adrian has been locked in his office too long. He could use some fresh air. Adrian gave his mother a knowing look, but he didn't argue. All right, he said finally. Come on, Mira. Let's go before she changes her mind again. The city market was alive with noise, vendors shouting, children laughing, and music playing from old radios. Mira smiled as she walked through the colourful stalls. It had been a long time since she felt this free. Adrian followed beside her, watching quietly as she haggled with sellers and laughed softly when a child offered her a flower. You seem to know how to talk to everyone, he said after a while. Mira looked at him with a small smile. People listen when you speak with kindness, not power. He chuckled. Then I've been doing it wrong my whole life. Their eyes met, and for a moment the noise of the market faded away. There was something unspoken between them, fragile yet strong, like the first light of dawn. But not everyone looked kindly upon their closeness. By the next morning, whispers had already spread among the staff. The boss is falling for the maid, someone said near the kitchen. She'll soon replace us all. And soon, the rumors reached the media. Headlines appeared online. Billionaire CEO and his mysterious girl. Who is she? Adrian's business rivals saw an opportunity. They mocked him at meetings, hinting that his emotions were making him weak. One evening, as he arrived home, reporters surrounded his car, flashing cameras and shouting questions. Mr. Cole! Is it true you're dating your mother's caretaker? Is she after your money? Adrian's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Mira stepped outside the gate. She looked at the reporters calmly and said, I'm just someone who helped when no one else did. Please leave us in peace. Her quiet dignity silenced them for a moment, but not for long. Inside, Adrian was furious. They have no right to speak about you like that. Mira shook her head. Let them talk. Words don't hurt as much as unkindness. He looked at her, admiration shining in his eyes. You're stronger than anyone I know. She smiled faintly. I had to be. Later that night, Evelyn called Adrian to her room. So, the world knows, she said gently. Are you ashamed? He looked down. I'm not ashamed, Mother, but I don't want her to suffer because of me. Evelyn smiled softly. If love is real, it will survive the storm. The next day, Adrian held a press conference. Cameras flashed as he stepped up to the microphone. I want to clear something, he said firmly. Mira is not my employee. She's the woman who saved my mother's life, and the reason I learned what kindness truly means. If that makes me foolish, then I'll gladly be foolish. The reporters went silent. Mira, watching from the mansion, felt her heart tremble. No man had ever spoken for her like that before. But just when peace seemed near, the phone rang. It was the hospital. Her brother's health had suddenly taken a bad turn. Mira ran through the rain that night, her heart pounding. Adrian followed soon after, finding her by Sammy's bedside, tears in her eyes. Please don't take him from me, she whispered to God, holding her brother's hand. Adrian stood beside her silently, placing his hand on her shoulder. You're not alone, Mira. Not anymore. The hospital room was dim and quiet, except for the steady beeping of a heart monitor. Rain tapped softly on the windows, as if the sky itself was waiting. Mira sat by Samir's bed, her fingers tightly holding his cold hand. She hadn't moved for hours. Her eyes were red, her lips trembling with silent prayers. "Please," she whispered, "you're all I have." Behind her, Adrian stood still, watching. His heart ached at the sight of her, this brave, gentle woman who had faced so much yet never stopped caring for others. "Doctors are doing their best," he said softly, but even his voice sounded uncertain. Mira looked up at him, her eyes filled with pain. "What if he doesn't make it? What if this is it?" Adrian knelt beside her. "Then I'll make sure you never face another day alone." I promise you that his words weren't grand or practiced. They were quiet, real, and full of something new, something that had nothing to do with guilt or duty. It was love. The night stretched long, but near dawn a miracle happened. The doctor came in, smiling gently. "He's stable," he said. "The medicine worked. He'll need rest, but he's going to be fine." Mira gasped, covering her mouth as tears of relief streamed down her cheeks. She turned to Adrian, and without thinking, threw her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." He held her close, not as a savior, but as someone who finally understood what it meant to care. A few weeks later, Samir returned home healthy and smiling. Evelyn Cole insisted on throwing a small celebration in the garden. The air was filled with the scent of roses and laughter. Mira wore a simple white dress, her hair tied loosely, her eyes glowing with peace. Adrian couldn't take his eyes off her. Evelyn, sitting in her chair, watched them both with a knowing smile. "You two remind me of spring," she said softly. "New life, new hope." Mira blushed, glancing at Adrian. "Madam, you're teasing again." Evelyn chuckled. "Call me Mother, dear." "You've earned it." Adrian turned to his mother. "Mother," he began, but she held up a hand. "Don't wait any longer, son. Life is short. Speak your heart." As the sun set over the garden, Adrian led Mira to the same bench where they had first talked about the stars. The light turned golden, wrapping them in warmth. He took her hands gently. "Mira, I once believed power could fix everything, that money could buy peace, love, or respect. But you showed me I was wrong. You gave my mother her life back. You gave me mine." Her eyes filled with tears. "Adrian," he smiled softly, "I don't want to repay you. I just want to stand beside you, not as the man you saved, but as the man who loves you. Will you let me?" Mira's heart fluttered. All her struggles, all her pain, it had led her to this moment. "Yes," she whispered, smiling through her tears. "But only if you promise one thing." "Anything," he said. She looked into his eyes. "That we never forget where we came from, or the people who still need kindness." He nodded, his voice thick. "I promise." Months later, the world would come to know the Mira Foundation, a charity created by Adrian and Mira Cole to help poor families and sick children. At the opening ceremony, Mira stood at the podium holding a small golden pendant, the same one that had once been mistaken for stolen. She smiled at the crowd and said, "Once, I was just a girl who helped an old woman in the rain. I didn't know that one act of kindness would change my whole life. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this: kindness is never wasted. It always finds its way home." The audience rose in applause. Adrian stood beside her, pride shining in his eyes. And somewhere deep inside, Mira knew, the pendant, the rain, the stranger, it had all been fate's quiet way of teaching her the greatest truth, greater than when you give kindness, you never lose. You only grow richer in heart.